Some individuals are unworthy of forgiveness. They exhibit such malevolence and pettiness that incarceration is the only suitable outcome for them. Thankfully, there are also individuals dedicated to ensuring that evil never prevails, heroes who tirelessly strive to create a safer world. Harry Evans dedicated half of his life to serving in the Colorado State Police Department. Over the course of his illustrious career as a police inspector, he handled a wide range of cases, from petty theft to pursuing some of the most notorious murderers in U.S. history. Born and raised in Denver, the city he never strayed from except for one instance when he had to rush to Florida for a family emergency, Harry considered it his true home. His commitment to ensuring the safety of all residents was unparalleled, earning him the admiration of even the mayor. In fact, the mayor, who shared a warm and professional bond with Harry, presented him with the keys to the city a couple of years back in recognition of his role in apprehending a dangerous serial killer responsible for the deaths of 4 teenage girls. On a personal note, Harry was well-liked by everyone. He was cheerful, the typical person who always knew how to get a smile out of you, even in the most uncomfortable moments. He always knew how to see the bright side of things. In short, among many other virtues, this quality made his wife, Margaret, who also worked as a police officer in the Colorado Department, fall madly in love with him and accept his marriage proposal without hesitation. Unfortunately, their marriage did not last as long as they'd hoped. Margaret died in the line of duty just 2 years after they were married. She and Harry were in charge of an undercover operation to uncover a dangerous drug ring. They'd done it before and had always been successful, but that night, nothing went as planned. Margaret was shot 3 times, the last one fatally directly in her heart. From then on, not only did Margaret's heart stop beating, but Harry was never the same and never let anyone get close enough to know what was inside him. What Harry never stopped doing, however, was working and continuing to strive daily to catch the bad guys who were trying to fill his city with pain and darkness. It could be said that after becoming a widower, Harry became the best version of himself as a cop. No one worked harder than he did, and he even worked overtime without anyone asking him to. His way of channeling his pain was through his dedication to the police force, something that everyone was eternally grateful for, despite knowing the real reason he acted that way. Harry, you're our best agent, and you know we all appreciate you here. But if you need to stop and take a break, don't hesitate to ask for it. We all deserve a break, his sergeant once told him. Harry had been working his tail off for months and looked exhausted. However, he again refused any kind of help. Working is my rest, going home is my punishment. I thought you'd understand, John. You too became a widower. I never got your life back together. You know as well as I do the pain that entails. I'm fine like this. Let me help others. I'm more useful here than crying a picture at home, believe me, Harry answered honestly. They both knew each other well. In fact, they studied together at the police academy and were good friends. They kept no secrets from each other. The sergeant accepted his rejection and never brought up the subject again. He just stayed by his side and was grateful for each of Harry's achievements in solving cases. And it was precisely his dedication and his great police acumen that led him to solve a complicated case that the police had been working on for months. A really disturbing case in which Harry demonstrated once again his worth as a policeman and his commitment to this city. The event we're going to tell you about is a horrifying story where 26 innocent children were victims of the greed of an unscrupulous woman whose only purpose was to get rich at all costs, without caring about the consequences of her actions. Fortunately, Harry was there to stop her and put an end to the nightmare of all the families who fell into the trap of this vulgar criminal. It all started when a group of parents, very concerned about the welfare of their children, all of them under 3 years old, filed multiple complaints about Play Mountain Place Daycare to DHS, warning that the treatment their children were receiving was not adequate. While inspectors handling the complaints initially found nothing to indicate that mistreatment was occurring, when parents persisted and filed a new wave of complaints a month after receiving a negative response, DHS decided to take it seriously and take the investigation to the next level. The parents' complaints about Play Mountain Palace prompted DHS to conduct an in-depth child welfare investigation on November 13th. To make sure they didn't miss any details this time, they also asked police officers to accompany them to the site, with our protagonist, Harry Evans, being the inspector in charge of the case. However, to everyone's surprise, when investigators and police arrived at the daycare center, they found the surprising development: there were no children. The daycare center was completely empty and in quite bad shape. But contrary to what the parents had stated in their complaints, there was absolutely no one there. This put the police and DHS agents on alert, as it was not normal for a place where children are supposedly cared for to have no children and no adults in charge of the business to ask any questions. This is really suspicious. Where's everybody? Who's the owner of this place? We must find her as soon as possible to find out what's going on here, exclaimed Harry as he realized the seriousness of the matter. Right away, Inspector. We'll call the person in charge of this establishment right away and ask her the necessary questions," quickly answered one of the agents who accompanied them to carry out the inspection. They located the owner of the business by telephone and went to her house to question her. Her name was Carla Faith, 58 years old, and upon arrival, Harry and his colleagues questioned her about the whereabouts of the children. There was no time to lose, and it was clear this woman was hiding something. However, they found no answers when they went to see her and left with the same questions they arrived with. Faith refused to cooperate, but Harry, who had a terrible feeling as he looked into Faith's eyes, decided to disregard the words of the mysterious woman and went back to the nursery to take another look. It's impossible for the children to have just disappeared like that. If the parents left them there in the morning, they must still be there. We'll look again, and this time in depth. There must be some detail we're overlooking. Come on, guys, there's no time to waste, Harry ordered, rushing into the police car and leading his companions back to the nursery. When they returned to the nursery, everything remained the same. However, when everyone was silent and they were about to abandon the investigation because they couldn't find any useful evidence, Harry heard something that stopped his heart: the crying of children. They were crying inconsolably, and the sound was coming from somewhere inside. "They're here. The children are here. I heard them crying. There must be a hiding place behind a false wall or a basement with secret access. Let's find it now," Harry shouted as he heard the children crying. His heart skipped a beat, and he and his companions began to search the entire room for them. After a thorough search of the premises, they discovered a false wall in one of the interior rooms right next to the management office. Breaking it down, they gained access to a staircase leading to the basement of the building, where they found a furnished room containing 26 children under the age of 3, as well as 2 of the children's caregivers. Both the children and the 2 female employees looked pitiful when the police entered the dank, dingy basement. Many of the children began to cry in fear, and the caregivers looked at them as if they'd just seen an army of angels appearing. It was obvious that they were suffering and were very afraid of the lady who was forcing them to work in such subhuman conditions. Fortunately, Carla Faith would never mistreat anyone again. "Thank you, sir. I can't thank you enough for continuing to investigate until the end. Otherwise, that woman would have gotten away with it again. You don't know how evil she can be," confessed one of the employees to Evans before leaving with the paramedics to be treated in one of the ambulances that arrived at the scene after the police gave the warning. Thanks to the magnificent intervention of Harry, who decided not to give up and followed his instinct, and the health authorities who closed the center, these children would have justice and could once again lead a normal life and be cared for in a center suitable for them. Several of the parents affected by this terrible scam agreed to make a statement to KKTV and explain their experience so everyone would know the truth. "I was one of the first 2 parents to go to this site and would never have believed the state of affairs if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Before yesterday, I'd always dropped off and picked up my son in a clean, spotless, and loving environment. Yesterday, I picked up my son from his small, dirty room in a basement I'd never seen before, where 26 children were crammed together amid empty juice containers, graham cracker crumbs, and various children's blankets and stuffed animals. The room smelled like unchanged diapers, and several of the children were crying. The whole thing was the exact antithesis of everything I'd been led to believe my son was experiencing during the day spent at Play Mountain. My immediate hope was that this was a one-off, but in the corner of the basement, there were cubbies with children's names on them and diapers, including my own son's, leading me to believe that this was a place where they'd spend time on a regular basis. This was nothing like the level of care I'd been led to believe my son was receiving, and the amount of deception that went on to convince parents otherwise is completely mind-boggling. To say that I'm shocked, overwhelmed, and feel totally betrayed is an understatement, as I had nothing but good reviews of this place and the caregivers before yesterday. The 2 daycare workers at the scene were arrested on misdemeanor charges of aiding and abetting child abuse, but those charges were later dropped after further investigation found that both were being extorted by Faith and acting against their will for her. Faith has been detained pending trial. Without bail, she would spend a long time in a jail cell before being tried and would likely be sentenced to an exemplary prison term that would prevent her from ever making a child suffer again, as reported by the Los Angeles Times. It was revealed that Faith had a history of committing similar crimes before. Back in the 1990s, she operated Faith Family Daycare in Culver City, California, which provided services similar to the daycare center in Colorado. Following complaints, authorities investigated and found that she was enrolling more children than permitted by her licenses. As a result, Faith's business in California was closed down, prompting her to relocate to Colorado in an attempt to carry out her scheme without being caught. She almost succeeded, as Colorado daycare license applicants were not required to disclose information about previous licenses from other states, allowing her to open her daycare without any issues. However, Faith did not anticipate the presence of one of the top policemen in the country, possibly the best in Colorado. The arrival of Harry Evans completely altered the fate of the children and caregivers, liberating them from the clutches of a malicious criminal and ensuring she was apprehended to prevent further harm. The news of Harry's heroic actions quickly spread, turning him into a social media sensation. Messages of gratitude and admiration flooded Colorado PE's Facebook page, praising Harry for his courage and skill as a law enforcement officer. Despite the newfound fame, Harry remained humble and dedicated to his work, continuing to strive towards making his country a safer place.